were talking about the pyramids. We were talking about some of the varied theories of how they were constructed. Obviously, it almost seems impossible that humankind could do it.
Yeah, with the technology you would think would be available
when it
at
was
that
done.
time.
So there's one theory was from the hieroglyphs that there were chariots that came down, which would represent a UFO. Aliens came down and graced them with knowledge. Now, I tried to pull up ways that you could move great amounts of weight, and I still cannot get to the part where they're stacked. I can get you to find ways to move the weight, to slide it, to float it, to do all these different things. And then how do you explain how they get stacked? And they're so perfect.
Moving them into position.
So perfectly aligned. And then they did multiples of these. And then you also have the aspect of the constellations and things lining up. So what do you think, John?
Well, I've actually got a number of different takes on this. I mean, I do think it's possible for mankind to have done this.
Okay.
And similar constructions throughout the world. However, I don't think it was Egyptians that existed in 3,000 to 4,000 BC.
Okay.
I am a very large proponent of the theory that we have reset at some point. And the reset was during the Younger Dryas. I don't know if you're familiar with the Younger Dryas event.
Yeah.
But 11 to 12,000 BC, somewhere in that range, there was a catastrophe that happened, and the civilization that existed before that essentially was wiped out. It appears as though, if you look back at, they've done genetic testing on us, and they can trace every single human being on the planet's genes down to a point where it comes to just between 100 and 1,000 people. So in that point where there was maybe 1,000 or less people on the planet was 11 to 12,000 years ago, right after the Younger Dryas. And everyone on this planet has a similar gene structure that points to that exact moment. So the civilization that existed, the people that existed before the Younger Dryas event, all got killed, except for 1,000 or less. And we all repopulated the world. Well, if that society had the ability to move these stones in a way that we currently do not know about, we lost that technology. We lost that knowledge during that event, and it was just never passed on.
Let me interject real quick there. So if we have 1,000 people 11 or 12,000 years ago, that's an awful big boost to the population 12,000 years later of 8 billion, closing in on 8 billion people.
Yeah.
Does the math check out on how that could be repopulated?
I think it definitely goes along with what you had said before, where there was an event that the knowledge was lost.
Sure.
So like
if that took place though 12,000 years ago, we have 1,000 people that are repopulating the world. I mean, that
even today, if there was something, let's just bring it down to your city of 15,000 people or whatever.
Sure.
If there's a cataclysmic event that, only the strongest survivalist or the luckiest could survive, it's very plausible that it could be 100 people made it out. So that's the kind of the way I'm looking at it. Like there was a cataclysm of some sort.
But did it happen 12,000 years ago? Wouldn't it take 50,000 years?
I think that's the issue with the Younger Dryas.
Years.
I think that's the issue with the Younger Dryas. John, you can correct me on this or lead into this more. Is with the Younger Dryas, there's proof there that there was something that took place that wasn't recorded because knowledge was lost.
Sure.
Yeah, you can find. Oh, I wish I knew off the top of my head the name of it, but it's in South America, like Peru or somewhere down there, or Chile. But you can go up on top of a mountain that's like 16,000 feet above sea level. And the temple that was up there made by the blocks, these H stones, they're like H stones that interconnect. Those blocks are scattered about from floodwater. And when they were scattered about, it's estimated to be And it's not 12,000 years ago from now, because remember BC.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it would have
Okay.
been 14,000 years ago
Mhm.
from now.
Okay.
But anyways, so they estimate that happened 14,000 years ago, or 11 to 12,000 BC.
Mhm.
So that's showing another situation in archaeology that shows there was some kind of global flood, global catastrophe.
Sure.
And every flood myth in the world, from China to India to Japan to Rome to Europe to the Native Americans to our biblical myth, we all have a flood myth. Everyone on the planet, the
Yeah.
Sumerians,
Right.
Babylonians, like everyone has a flood myth. But going to your population thing, so in somewhere around the turn of the century, 1910 or so, is where we hit like a billion. We hit 1 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
And then by 1970, somewhere in there, 60 to 70, we were at 2 billion.
Okay.
So it took us
Sure.
Yeah.
roughly 14,000 years to make a billion. Then the second billion only took like 60, 70
Like
years.
lemmings.
And
Right.
now
Yep.
we're at 8 billion, only like, you know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yep.
So
No. Yeah. That
I think
makes
your
sense.
lodging got more comfortable, so it was easier
Yeah,
to make those babies.
Well,
we,
yeah,
like,
and the birth rate was
exponentially-
better, and
Yeah.
you know.
we
Your health.
exponentially seem to be growing. So I think it is plausible
Sure.
that
Okay.
a billion people could have been born in 14,000 years.
Yeah.
You know, and then we just like blew up in the last 100 years. You
Right.
know
The
what
more
I mean?
you
Like,
have, the
yeah.
quicker.
But it's like
And,
also, I
Sure.
guess, I'm looking more or less at like not necessarily when, but what was it that took away everybody? Like I'll say the Mayans, for example. We know they were here. They made these structures. They have different things going on down in Mexico with their pyramids and things like that. But it's like, where did they go?
Was it
Well, that was
disease
disease.
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
catastrophe?
You know, same thing.
Yeah,
And
that we think was disease from the Europeans coming over. More and more Europeans came over with disease that was unfamiliar to them.
yeah.
Mhm.
But the reason I think there's a very good reason why I'm on the camp of the Younger Dryas event in this prior civilization disappearing, and part of that is because I've basically been told it almost my whole life. So when like it was only about 10, 12 years ago that my father came out and told me that he worked on the moon project. He was on with the moon landing. He worked on that project.
Wow. Okay.
My father worked
I
for
was
Bell
hoping you'd bring
Labs.
this up.
My father worked for Bell Labs and then Kodak and stuff, and he was very much into the camera systems that were in around at that time. And they actually got my dad and put him on a group that designed and built the apparatus that holds the cameras, and he actually chose some of the camera equipment and things that would go on the lunar orbiter. And the
Wow.
lunar orbiter was designed to take pictures of the moon as it orbited the moon, and from those photos they were going to figure out where to land, the best place to land, you know. And my father was in the room when they were downloading some of the first pictures. And he doesn't really want me talking. Like, I've recorded a video with him that after he passes away, he wants everyone to know all the stuff that happened and what he saw. But for now, he wants to keep a lot of that under wraps. He was under a 35-year non-disclosure agreement because of the stuff he did for the moon landing and the stuff
Yeah.
he saw in some of the images. And there are things that were anomalous, we'll just say that for now, in some of the images. And he went to lunch with a number of the guys, scientists and various other people in various fields. And he said that the question came up about Earth and our history, and has anyone on the planet ever left the planet before? Like, could there have been another civilization that existed, even one that possibly left the planet? And
Wow.
these scientists told my dad, yes, there's enough evidence to suggest within our own planet and in the solar system itself to suggest that something was out there. Now, and some of these guys actually thought that a catastrophic event happened in our past and reset our technological state. They said the same thing would happen today if we had a global catastrophe that wiped out 99% of the people and you were down to 1%. And the people who survived were ones that were not living in major cities, the ones who were not living on the coastlines, and people who were living in just like way out in the country in the middle of Montana or something like that. Now, the average person living on a farm in Montana, do you think they would have any clue how to even turn on a nuclear power plant to get the power back on?
No.
Right. Yeah,
do you think they would have, do you think most of them, some of them may not even have a clue how to restart their car if it breaks down? Do you know what I mean? Like people in today's
lost technology. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the people that exist today, think about a lot of young people today. They don't know how anything works. They don't know how your phone works. They don't know how a computer works. They just use all this stuff, but they don't have a clue how any of it works. So if everything's shut off and they were stuck with nothing, you know what they wouldn't have a clue. They would have to go back to like planting seeds.
If I can go back just for a second to talk about some of the images and things that they were looking at when your dad was working with these things. It made me think of today. They're letting us see pictures and photos from Mars.
Yeah.
They keep having close-ups of things that there's almost no denying that something, it was something there. Just recently, there's a breakdown on the rover. Something broke off of it. So there was a picture of that. And then the camera will move and show you the tread on the tire. And then it'll move again and it'll show you up on a hill. And it looks like the spine of like a lizard or a large snake or something almost prehistoric. It looks like bones covered in sand.
Really? I haven't seen that.
I just saw this the other day, and I'm thinking, think back to the 60s. They wouldn't never want you to see something like that. And now today, it's almost as if you're seeing it like, whoops, like maybe we shouldn't let people see that. But then again, I'm just amazed at some of the stuff they've been showing on these images.
So perhaps there's been multiple incidents where technology is built up
like a reset,
and then lost and built up, and the Younger Dryas may be the most recent big impact that way, but maybe
if you think that the other thing to think about is our planet is they say it's 4.5 billion years old. What if a civilization evolves every billion years and there's a billion years between each one or something? You know what I mean? That whole civilization, like think about us here, we have our planet, the crust of the earth, like what we're sitting on right now, slowly goes underneath another plate, turns into lava, gets cycled all the way back around, say like the East Coast gets cycled all the way back around to the West Coast, comes back up as land on that side.
Yeah.
Well, when it's underneath and turned into lava, all of our stuff is gone, all of our buildings, everything. And that happens generally about 500 to 700,000 years to cycle through, right?
Okay.
So that whole cycle could have happened at least 4 times on this planet if it's 4 billion years old.
Yeah.
And there's only certain parts of the world where we have rocks that are over 1 billion years old. You know what I mean? Because they're in some area that just didn't get subducted by this recycling that our crust does.
Right.
But any building, especially a building that say was built 3 billion years ago, if there was any trace at all, it would have been subducted at least once and gone under and turned into lava and come back out the other side. And there'd be no trace of it once it melted down to lava and came back out as crust on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, so there'd be absolutely no way for you to know. That's why a lot of our bones and skeletons and things go back millions of years, not billions. We don't have life, fossils of the life that was around 3 billion years ago. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have a clue what was on this planet that far ago, right?
Sure.
It's tough to fill in that blank.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are then in terms of how near are we to another reset then? Because I think we're closer than ever, but then again, the media loves to spin things,
Well, you want to know something?
Yosemite's overdue, right?
Well, there's natural,
but then
Yellowstone.
There's also wars and... Yellowstone is a freaking super volcano, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we look at the natural aspect only and not the human part of it, I think the humans play a part in that too, right? Like we don't know if
Yeah.
we have this blank and we're just trying to theorize, we could say there was a great war, there was a natural
yeah.
thing,
Sure.
you know.
Sure, it could be an
I mean,
asteroid. It could be, yeah.
I think we're overdue.
There's legends and mythology in India that claim that there was a powerful explosion in, was it Mohenjo-daro, or what's that one called, where everything turned to glass, the ground turned to glass.
Okay.
And that happens from a nuclear explosion. When
Right.
the nuke goes off, sand turns into glass. It what do they call it? Vitrification?
Yeah.
Vitrification or something. And part of that is underwater because the city disappeared after this. And now that we can, go down with submarines, or we're under there, people have found the city underneath the water, and sure enough, it's vitrified, it's turned into glass,
They
and
call
the
it
only way that
trinitite.
could have happened is if there was a nuclear bomb that went off back then.
Right.
But how could there be a nuclear bomb in prehistory? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
whether it was an alien nuclear bomb or we had technology that we lost, you know what I mean? Because of what their legend comes from.
Going back to
civilization.
the time of the pyramids being built, they're using stone, right? That's going to be around forever unless it's inducted. But the way we're building things today, 1,000 years from now, it doesn't have to be cataclysmic problem or blown up. I mean, just you stop. Humans are around 1,000 years from now. You're not going to have any
also
of our current buildings.
materials and the methods we're using. I can tell you in the line of work I'm in, there's solid steel I-beams that I've seen rot away because of another process blowing this type of gases on it.
Remove humans from,
so it may not last 1,000 years to let somebody come through and do it.
Doesn't have to be a disaster that gets rid of it. Just the humans that are taking care of it are building. And
I agree.
So the
stone, there's actually nothing that says they didn't have cities like ours back then. And the stuff that did survive is the stuff they made out of stone, because we also have made stuff out of stone. Think about like the Mount Rushmore or something like that. Like that theoretically is going to last forever. You know what I mean? Like
a million years from now.
The nose might fall off just like it fell off the Sphinx. But I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like we're still going to see some part of four humans' faces, whether they're degraded or not. They're still going to be there thousands of years from now. And what else have we built that might last? I mean, there's other things we've built out of stone and things that, some of those temples in Europe and castles and churches and things, it's a possibility that some of that might still be they might look like the ruins of Rome or, other things by then, but that some part of them could last for tens of thousands of years.
If we could go to the time of the pyramids, and there's the speculation that, like I mentioned earlier, they say the chariots with the aliens and they shared this knowledge. What if, just a what if, I'm going to say there were aliens and they did visit, but rather than share knowledge with us, maybe we all just compared notes. Maybe our great engineers of the time were able to communicate, contact, do other things. We talked about the granite that they brought 500 miles to put in a chamber in the pyramid, and it's like perfectly balanced. And what is it? What was this chamber for? Maybe some sort of energy holding tank.
People think it's a power generator.
Power generator, and we were able to leave the planet and communicate with other galaxies or beings or something like that. I do think that there's just a big loss of knowledge when these whole generations of human beings were wiped out.
Sure.
We don't know what happened.
There are some people who really think there are pyramids on Mars and monoliths and other things.
Sort of a way to travel, like waypoint.
There is a monolith on the moon. People have seen photos of that. And it's very similar to the monolith that's on Mars. And there's some line of thought that, like, because I don't know if you know, but it's not just the stones on the outside that are impressive. They are giant stones. But if you go to the interior and look at like the king's chamber or whatever you want to call it,
yeah.
Pharaoh's chamber, some of those stones that make up that roof and those that chamber walls are even larger than anything that's on the outside.
Right.
And they're even more precise and fit together with two stones coming together with no seam. There's like, you can't get a freaking piece of paper or a hair between them, you know?
That's exactly what he said.
No
Yeah.
mortar.
Yeah.
It's not like today when we
Right.
build brick and mortar. They're perfectly aligned.
Right.
You know what I mean? In every
Right.
way. And the little shoots that go out from that chamber to the
Right.
outside,
Mm-hmm.
like they've been scarred with chemicals of different chemicals. So like the one offshoot that points towards such and such star, like Sirius or whatever, has sulfuric acid or something in it or whatever, you know what I mean? And the other one that points toward like Orion or whatever, you know, has a different chemical, like say hydrogen or something is in that chamber. So it's almost as if people were pouring from the outside different
Like
materials
a fuel, maybe.
that
Chemical reaction.
that
Sure.
would all mix and create a chemical reaction inside the chamber. And the chamber's designed with this like stepped, sort of like angular stepped thing to go to the middle. And they think that is all designed to create this vortex or sort of circular motion of this material as it mixes. And it's directed towards the top because then the cone of the pyramid that was like a different material, which is why it's gone,
Right.
the top of the pyramid would have shot out the energy. And there's a theory that the like Earth and Mars and the other planets that might, like some of the other moons, like say we get out to like Enceladus and Titan and things and we find a pyramid on all these things, like they would have connected in space, and this energy field would have basically engulfed our entire solar system. And then our energy field would extend to the next solar system, like Alpha Centauri or whatever. You know what I mean? And Proxima. You could go to Proxima Centauri and Alpha Centauri and stuff. And you've got this network of energy that goes throughout multiple planets and multiple solar systems. It's just a theory by some people. I mean, it might be a whack job, but
it could have been
Could
an
be.
easy way to travel.
it very well could. Yeah,
Kind
it
of
could
like
be
riding
something.
the energy wave.
And I
Using
said
that.
that sometimes there's human beings that are just they just stumble onto things by looking at it, and they kind of go, and instead of using a tool, they just go, how about if I just do it like this? That ought to do it. And there's a guy in Michigan that could move, 2 tons, and he stood up a 1,900-pound block. He moved his kid's pole barn just with stones and wood. And then you think about Nikola Tesla, who was on the verge of giving us wireless energy transfer.
Yeah.
So like, did he know of some ancient thing somehow, or was he
And
just
the guy-
tapping into it, figuring it out, and that would have been the new beginning of what we lost?
The guy down here in Florida, that created the Coral Castle, claims that he discovered it. He built that overnight. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And there's stones that he erected and moved around that weigh like 100 tons. You know, and the guy was only like 5 feet tall and he weighed 90 pounds.
Yeah.
So and he did it by himself. You know,
It's like the power of the mind. Some people can tap into this sort of hive mind and gain this infinite piece of an infinite amount of knowledge, enough to accomplish something.
Well, some
that we
people
just
say
can't figure out a way back into.
Some people say it's resonant frequencies because, like,
there you go.
Oftentimes in ancient, mythology or our ancient legends, even sometimes in the Bible, in our textbooks of things, they talk about, well, they all blew the horns, or they hummed a certain hum, or they chanted a certain chant, and the stones floated. And as science today, we look at that and go, bull crap. They didn't float. You know what I mean? They were just saying that.
We talked about the frequency stuff with Montauk, where
but we can see that with superconductors in a lab, they can tone the frequencies, and those things will start floating. So who's to say that there isn't some tone or some way of chanting or getting a collective community together to make this hum or something from our voice, or through a tube or
There's
through that
there's
could
such a
make
connection,
those,
man. Nature and frequency. I have a hearing issue that you can completely dissolve with music that has this frequency set in the music. So people will make compilations and they'll have this tone in there, and the tone will make it disappear until it stops. Then it comes back. It's a ringing. It counteracts it. It's a ringing.
Yeah. Huh.
And frequency to me is the key to a lot of things.
So
I think there's more to it. Yeah.
Definitely.
There's a story in the Bible about the Jericho, city of Jericho,
The walls,
and
and
they walked around it, and in a certain cadence, blew the trumpets. They all yelled in a certain note frequency, and then the walls came tumbling down.
Right.
Now, some say it's just a story, but all these stories kind of have a common thread and lean on the same thing. It's vibration, frequency, noise, sound.
And one other fascinating question that my father brought up, and this kind of ties in, I mean, we might be going a little bit off topic, but it ties into today and what's going on in the news. I mean, we had a hearing back in June in front of Congress. We had another one in November, and now a final one in December 13th, where you've got various military guys and now a person from NASA. On December 13th, one of them was actually working for NASA, and they're sitting there and saying these UAP that we see are real. And on the December 13th one of a congresswoman actually asked point blank, "You're telling me that these aren't from our planet. These are from another world, like off in the solar system." And two of the guys said, "We do not know." But the other two said, "Yes, I think this is definitive. They're not of Earth." So it was the first time that Congress actually said aliens from another world. You know what I mean? It was the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the one guy, military guy, said there's no way the way this craft was moving, it could be of human engineering.
And my father, he says when we actually have a landing and we see the beings that get off that ship, my father's like 100% sure that they're going to look like us. Because they might be evolved a little bit more, so there'll be like some changes in the physiology or whatever, but they're essentially going to be us. They're going to have our DNA, and we're going to be compatible with them, say sexually. You know what I mean? And he said, and the reason he thinks this is because he says, what if that society from back before the Younger Dryas, so say 20,000 years ago, the society had the ability to travel to other planets. They were space capable, and they knew this catastrophic event was happening. So what they did is they gathered their brightest minds and the best they could get, and they got on some ships and they left the planet. And they left the billion people, whoever it was that had to stay here, to die. They were like, "Sorry, guys, we're going to save our race by taking these few people and leaving, and we're going to Proxima or we're going to Alpha Centauri, the two closest star systems. One of them's only 4 light years away." So they go, so it's like even at a partial, like say they had technology beyond ours and they were able to go like, a quarter of the speed of light. If it's only 4 light years away, wouldn't that mean that it would take them less than a century to get there? So say they take 100 years or something to get to Proxima or to get to Alpha Centauri. They find a planet they can live on. They live there for 1,000 years. And then they go, you know what? It's time we went back to Earth and to see what happened. They send a scouting party on a few ships. They come back to Earth, taking another 50 or 100 years, however long it takes them to travel now, because they kept going with their technology. So they might be advanced another 1,000 years. They get back here and they go, "Oh crap, not everybody died."
Yeah. And they're like apes. I mean? They're still apes to us.
And they're
need to go.
They're like a few people survived, and look, they're repopulating and doing stuff. And our legends, our religious legends and mythology is they came down and they said, "Hey, we're going to help you guys out. You're us. We thought everyone died." And we got these stories that were then passed on. But the people were still so beyond the technological state that they were essentially primitive again, and thought these people to be gods. And that's why they say, we're in God's image, because they did look like us. You know what I mean? And then they were like, oh my gosh, we're screwing them up. So let's leave. And from now on, all we're going to do is observe from the air, or observe from space, or wherever we are. And when the time is right, we'll try to recontact and reconnect. And that time that's right is maybe now. And that's why we're seeing all these, and the government's coming clean and stuff like that. And that the big secret isn't that they're aliens. The reason the government's been hiding it is because since Roswell, they've known, oh crap, it's us. And if we tell the people that we had a catastrophe that wiped us out, I think that would freak people out more than aliens are here. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, imagine if the general public found out we screwed up once already and wiped ourselves out. You know what I mean?
I think
reset,
too, I think too that when you get into outer space, if we think about outer space for a minute, I don't think time flows and works the same way it does when we're here on the planet.
Well, no, because the faster you're going, the relativity thing.
Yeah, but in saying that, I also had a theory myself, my own little way of putting things in a package about the little gray men, was that it was us, because my theory was, so I'm just going to say I like what you said and I believe it, but there's also this little side chain that happened where there's experimenting here, where we found a piece of tech, or we reverse engineered something, and we're trying some experiments, and some guys accidentally hit a button and went, like, they sent this thing and they went way too far out of where they wanted to test this craft or engine or whatever it was. By the time they came back around their loop, let's say 50 years passed on Earth. But the craft that they're in couldn't really protect their human bones and bodies, and it kind of messed them up a little bit. The guys that were on the original lunar missions, they found that they had bone loss and things when they came back. So I was like, okay, these guys went so far, they overshot the target, and by the time they got back, they couldn't even mouth words. They were just like little gray men. They couldn't even say to you what it was. And they're trying to warn you, like, don't hit that button again. Don't test that drone again, And so that's, to me, like a little side quest that happened. And kind of gets in the way of these things. You can think these things out, and they, to me, are logical.
Yeah.
Especially when you said what you said about the pyramids and the tank, the fuel tank, so to speak, inside the pyramids. They set them in different places in a certain way. They get it all set up, and it just worked. And we were able to travel and do all these things, and then something happened to cut it off.
Yeah. And
everybody got screwed, because it didn't just ruin things here. It, like, if you know what I mean, like, it was connected. So if it exploded here, it exploded there, it exploded over here, and it ruined the whole network, the travel.
Maybe in our sector. Yeah,
exactly. Our sector. Like, there you go. Yeah. Great way to say it.
Yeah. See, like, what the heck was I just gonna say? I was gonna say with your thing with the grays and the human connection. Like, I often think that, like, if you look at geology and what we know about our planet, and then then the moon and Mars, and you go further out to Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, like all of our planets, all of the rocky and gaseous things that we call moons that are around, like Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and stuff, and Uranus. And you go out to the Oort cloud, and you go to the asteroid belt. All of geology is made up of the same materials. It's not like we went out there and we find an asteroid that, holy crap, this asteroid is made of an element we've never seen before, or or this planet, when we collect samples, it's like all new to us. So if all of geology, if all of the stuff in the universe in our is the same, then why wouldn't living things follow the same pattern as well? They have to be made of the same materials, you know what I mean? Because we haven't found any strange or weird materials in our looking, right now. So why would we suddenly run across a life form that's made of something we've never seen before? So
Right.
and I think evolutionary biology suggests that animal life, like physical things that move around, is going to follow a pattern. It's followed the same pattern everywhere on Earth. Like when something goes onto land, in the water, it can take any shape it wants. We've got octopus, fish, we've got sharks, we've got all kinds of things in the water, crabs, whatever. But when it comes to the land, it's not like one thing came out and turned into legs, and then every single living thing on the planet stemmed from that one thing, which is why we all have legs. Legs evolved like 10 different times. It evolved in lizards, it evolved in mammals, it evolved in insects, it evolved in legs keep evolving no matter what. So therefore, an alien on another planet is probably going to have legs and arms
Yep.
because
Some
everything we know
shape,
does.
size. Right.
They have a collection of sensory organs that are usually in a central spot, like a head, where you can see, hear, smell, taste, all that. Your sensory organs are in a collected spot. We see that with cats. We see that with dogs. We see that even with insects. They have a head. You know what I mean? Like, so
Mhm.
there's going to be a sensory organ collective place where it's connected to the central brain. So in a sense, it's going to be logical that every alien is going to have some kind of head, some kind of body, and some kind of like arms and legs. Now they might have 6, they might have 8, they might have 2 heads, you know what I mean? But they're going to have that sort of
Right.
basic structure, you know what I mean? But so I've heard people often say, when like, if abductions are real and these things where they're connecting, people can connect and talk to other aliens and see them. It's often been stated, and even in some of the files that have come back, that in the past someone may have said they might have questioned whether these files are real or not. But now that things are coming out saying the government's been studying this stuff since the 40s, maybe these documents are real. There are documents from the government that suggest that they've been in contact with 5 different species of aliens: the reptile ones, the grays, the Nordic type ones, and a couple others. Well, what if those Nordic ones, because the Nordic ones look like humans, only taller. They're basically humans. They have our
Hmm.
fleshy skin. They're usually like light colored hair, like white to blonde or light brown. They don't usually have dark hair like brown, like dark brown or black, but they're usually the lighter colored hair, which is why they call them Nordics. And and they have like more like sharper ears. They're not as rounded as our ears. So a lot of people have said, like, I met elves on that thing or something like that, because the ears remind them of elves.
Hmm.
And they're taller than us. They're usually 6 to 8 feet tall, but thin, and thin and muscular. So it's kind of like the Nordics could be the ones that used to live here and they've gone to other planets. And what if the gravity is a little bit less on the planet they got to, which made them grow taller? Because if we had a higher gravity on our planet, we would all be shorter and stouter.
Right.
If we had less gravity, we'd be taller and thinner.
Well, what
So
about the idea that here, even here on Earth, with the same gravity for everyone, there was a race of giants, the Nephilim or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
that 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot tall.
yeah.
They supposedly found a bunch of uh, skeletons and went to
Mhm.
Smithsonian,
The
and now they're
Well,
locked
Smithsonian,
up. And
the Smithsonian
we
itself has
lost
covered
them.
that up. Yeah,
what if well, also too, like, so what if we had this travel system set up with the pyramids, okay?
Mhm.
And it was our, like you said, John, in the greater universe, it was our sector, and we could go to, let's just say 8 or 10 locations, and not a heck of a lot of folks could get the ability to go do it. Maybe they couldn't afford it, maybe they weren't smart enough to get into some kind of program, I don't know. But let's just say that when the Dryas event happened, they were stranded. So not only were some of us stranded there, some of them were stranded here. And you got the Nephilim, the others.
yeah.
Um, You know what I mean? Like
Well,
you can't get home. You're stuck.
And where did they come from to begin with?
But
though?
your DNA can mate with our females
Yeah.
and males, and so
Is there any possibility that not only did we leave and come back, but there's another race that developed somewhere else?
That's what I mean.
And
yeah, exactly. And that goes back to what he was saying earlier about, John was saying earlier about one day they're going to get out of the ship and we're going to go, oh wow, that looks like Larry down the street, just bald or whatever, you know.
But if you go to a different planet in our solar system, even, you know, you may have high levels of methane or
that would affect you physically. Yeah.
Right. So if a life developed there, they would be not oxygen based, maybe, or there'd be some way.
I mean,
if they came to Earth,
the pictures that I just saw recently coming back from Mars, I mean, I can't explain it. It looks skeletal.
Yeah,
and it looks like a large, maybe a serpent, crocodile, something. You just see the spines of what you would consider vertebra or maybe ribs. You don't see the rest. There's obviously more though, but we need to have soil. We need to send equipment and have a way to do an archaeological.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
When Elon's robots get all ready to walk around and do stuff, I mean,
if they could gently remove the soil and things without, you know, like we do, it'd be time to go do that, because we're seeing things that just cannot be explained. You know, you could say for a long time, that's just a rock. That's just a rock. Well, now they're finding proof of water. They're finding things under the surface. They're doing drills. The cores are showing there's stuff that we could, you know, they want to do the thing from the movie where they have a generator of some sort that pumps some gas back up out of the crust of that planet and makes it habitable again. I don't know about that part of it, but there was obviously something there.
Yeah.
That can't be explained as just a rock anymore.
John, just bring it back to the most recent current news that you were talking about. What's your take? What's your thought on the drones? And there's several different types and varieties that they're seeing. The orbs, not only that, but actual drones going on. What's your take on?
Well, the drone stuff that people have seen, like I've seen photographs of them during the day, and you can clearly tell that they are a white or grayish body with 4 propellers on them.
Okay.
They're the same as those little drones you can buy at Walmart and stuff that you and I can buy off the shelf, except they're scaled up to the size of like 20 feet long. So they are clearly military or police drones. They're not something that you or I could buy off the shelf. They're something that's built for military or police use. So, but they are drones, and I do believe they're from our planet.
Of our planet.
They're not stuff. I mean, because the stuff that seems to come from somebody else not on Earth doesn't have 4 propellers on it. They look like the Tic Tac or like the gimbal or something. You know,
do you think there's a mix of that's going on? You've got human-made, human-flown drones.
That's the question. Like, because some people have swore that they see, like, say they see a Tic Tac in the sky, and then shortly thereafter these drones show up, or the next 3 or 4 nights the drones are flying around. So you could make the argument that in the past, like 20 years ago, we have a lot of instances where people have seen flying saucers or some kind of UFO, and then F-16s come flying by after it.
Like
you
a
know
rapid
what I mean?
response.
Well, what's the military going to use today? Instead of an F-16, they're going to use a drone.
Sure.
So what if those drones are trying to track the UFO that someone saw on the first night, and then the next 3 or 4 nights it's all drones?
Yeah. And how do we know those weren't self-launched?
You know,
technology where it's like a rapid response system where they're
AI controlled,
they're self-launched. And one hand of the military is not going to tell the other military. One hand of the government's not going to tell the local police. They're not going to tell anybody what they're doing. It could just be this little group of 50 of them that as soon as something happens, it detects it, it takes off.
It's the Space Force, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it could be AI very much.
Because the other thought from my side of it is, there has to be a reason that because you know that the government knows what they are. There's no way they don't know what these drones
They'd
are.
be shooting them down, or there'd be a military response if they didn't.
So they've got to know what's going on, and they just don't want to tell us right now. So either they are drones made by the United States, and they're there for that purpose. Something made an incursion into our airspace, and then these drones automatically got sent up and flew over to try and figure out what it was and what's going on, if it's a threat or not. And then if in a real war situation or threat situation it were deemed a threat, then you fly the F-16s in, they shoot their missiles and blow the thing out of the sky.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, they're just flying around they're assessing the situation and probably coming back. They're a non-threat. It's a non-threat situation, so no jet planes were sent into the air, because that takes waking somebody up, getting the thing fueled. Where a drone, it's just up there, it's faster. You know, and
if you're going to shoot something down over a populated city area, you better be sure.
You better be sure. Yeah. Now, the other side of it is the other scenario, which is a little bit more scary, is that the drones are not just here in the United States. There's drones that have been all over the UK. There are the same drones that have been seen all over parts of Australia. And they seem to be coming into more sensitive areas in the UK and Australia, where in the US we seem to have some that are in sensitive areas, but some that just seem to be over major cities and populated areas.
Right.
And the thing that gets me is, what do all three of those countries have in common? And I don't mean to get political here, but they've all helped out the Ukraine. So, and there are people that have posted videos on YouTube and Twitter and other sites, Instagram and stuff, that their whole account has been taken down after posting the video, and they have to start a new account. And they've come on saying, yeah, after I posted that stuff, my account got shut off, and now I'm here with a new account. And in some of those videos, the guys they use their store-bought drone, and they're sitting out on a boat in the ocean off the shore in the Atlantic, and they see these drones coming in from the ocean and going over the city. And then when they come back out, they throw their drone up, and their drone follows it for about a half hour, and they get it on video following it. And they're in their boat underneath traveling along. And when theirs runs out of battery about a half hour later, that drone keeps going. And they can keep going. They collect their drone, get the video footage. They keep going with their boat, and they're using a GoPro or something. And they get to a certain point out there, like 30 miles offshore or something, where they see a battleship. And those drones are landing on the battleship. And then you see more drones leaving the ship and going towards shore. And then that video gets taken down. And that battleship has no flags on it. There's no markings on the side. No numbers to tell you what they are, like a normal boat has.
From what country it may be from.
Yeah, so you have no idea what country it's from, whatever. Well, either that's like an undercover, like black site thing for the U.S. government to launch from, or it's from another country that's involved in one of these wars.
I can't imagine our military would allow that.
Well, they're off in international shores. If they're far enough away, they're in international.
I just read an article,
but they should see them on radar coming in and have a response. If it's not our own government, you would think there'd be a wall. There should be a wall. Like
I just read today that I just read an article today in the Ukraine specifically that there's so much drone activity that the pilots are having so much success that they're bumping into the enemy drones and picking up on their frequencies and things and picking up all their information. They know where they're going back to, because it's like two different, it's like something brand new versus something that's like 20 years old. And they're like, oh, we just follow them. But that's neither here nor there. It's just saying there's a lot of drone activity. I just feel like that's kind of the wave of the future of air combat, is like you said, John, it's easier to launch, 50 drones, 150 drones than worry about the planes. They're more expensive.
You don't need a
effort.
Human pilot in there, and they can maneuver.
Right. And some of those drones are the size of small planes anyway. They're gigantic. But there's also, in between all of this, there's some sneaky stuff going on. There's some secret
certainly
situations where they're doing research, and I think the theory that at least on our east coast of our country anyway, to say it's like a rapid response type of thing makes a lot of sense.
So
because somebody could be out on a boat
testing, and the other thing too is what if
something.
they're testing a rapid response situation?
Right.
What
What
they're
if
not
that
ready to
boat's
roll it
out
out?
there? Yeah. What if that boat's out there and the boat sends something in,
Mm-hmm.
which gives off a signal that they're testing, and then all the drones wake up and go, and they're testing this response system.
But we also have stealth technology.
Yeah.
Maybe there's going to be stealth drones. To me, is the next step.
Sure.
Yeah.
It'll be to your door before you can detect it, you know.
And where did the technology come from that, and who knows if this is true or not, but some of these are undetectable by a heat signature or propulsion, right? Where did that technology come from? I mean, that's pretty incredible that they have a anti-gravity or some sort of
John, what was the one sighting? I know we talked about it before. It was what is it called? The
gimbal,
the cube inside the circle or something like that.
Yeah, there was a circle inside a cube or whatever.
Yeah, circle inside a cube. Yeah.
Or maybe it was a cube inside a circle,
or anything. And then they've recently
no heat signature.
They recently had the one float through the black site inside of a military compound. There's a black site, and they had that drone float through, and they could see it in an imaging
in infrared, but you couldn't see it.
Couldn't see it with heat. Yeah.
So is that alien technology, or is that just human?
It's thought that it's alien, but it's being used nefariously.
Yeah.
So who knows?
We don't know. Yeah.
Is it any of that tied to the fog?
That's weather phenomenon can be played.
This morning we couldn't see out our back. You couldn't see the
fog. That's another rabbit hole.
Yeah, we can play with the weather too.
The fog. Yeah.
We have a lot of orchards here. There's a lot of orchards here where we live, and they use cannons.
The most basic understanding, we can manipulate weather to the smallest degree, but then what's beyond that, and who knows about the fog?
Great lizard.
Yeah. But back on the Egypt is not the only thing that has stonework like that. I mean, there's stonework like that in South America.
Machu
stonework
Picchu.
like that. Yeah, and what often gets misunderstood is, I mean, there's stonework like that in Europe. There's stonework like that in Greece and Rome and in Italy and everything. And what's often misunderstood is they look at something like, say, the Acropolis or whatever it's called, and they go, well, clearly that was built by the Romans or the Greeks or whoever built it. But it's like, yeah, the building was, but look what the building is sitting on. The building is on top. So they have small bricks that are like maybe this big, you know what I mean? That built the Acropolis, you know what I mean? But if you look at what it's sitting on, it's sitting on stones that are 30 feet long and 9 feet wide and 12 feet deep that weigh 500 tons or
there
something.
You go.
You know what I mean? Each stone. And there's like 4 of these that make the base. So that base, even when you look at it with your eyeballs, you can see the degradation of the stones that the Romans put there. And you look at the base and go, boy, that looks like it's like 100,000 years older. You know what I mean? Like when you look at the wear that's on the stones, we know who put there because we have written record of them building the building.
Right.
And in the written record, they say they chose that spot because it was a sacred place because of what had come before it. Yeah. Well, the reason it was sacred is because it had these giant slabs of stone there that they had no clue where they came from. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, well, the gods must have put these down. It's a sacred place. So let's build our temple on the sacred land of the gods. You know what I mean?
I think we definitely had a period of time where humans had abilities, just I guess in the engineering aspect, to figure things out. So much better in some ways. I mean, I'll just show you this. We were talking about the how do you say that? The Kailasa?
Yeah.
These guys just dug this out of rock.
Right. So
Yeah.
they didn't excavate and then build up. They dug down, and every movement had to be thought of and planned at least somewhat to some degree ahead of time to know what not to take out and what to leave, and the intricate detail. And then they have photos on the inside. You cut this thing out a little bit wrong on the way down. I don't know how you get
and then
that.
how do they get inside it? What kind of tools could have done
it's
this?
a relief cut, not
far,
building it.
out of a single stone, basically.
I was telling Brett earlier, it's almost like a reverse 3D print, right?
Yeah,
You're not adding layers up, you're taking layers a little bit
called,
off.
In like in technology terms, like if we were to use the laser ablated away the material.
It's
You would do laser
incredible.
ablation to zap away the material you don't want and leave behind the 3D structure that you do want. And that's,
just imagine carving into rock.
Not only having the technology to do that, but then the planning, the idea, the thought, to be at that level of architecture back then.
So amazing. It's
incredible. And if we're saying the Younger Dryas, 11 to 12,000 years ago, and look where we've progressed since then. Let's say there was another reset, 40,000 years ago, and they had 20 or 25,000 years to progress before the next catastrophe. Where did they go? How far did they progress? That's incredible.
Well, in isn't it true that a lot of, because there's more than one of those places where they've carved it out of the stone like that, where it's like the negative way.
There's several.
Aren't there some that they have we don't have any clue how old they are?
There's another mosque that is in the side of a mountain like that. Instead of,
I think there was over 30.
Down, it's on in this, and just all relief.
I think
cuts.
they have over 30. It's just amazing.
Because I feel like my old boss, when I lived in Seattle, I feel like she went to somewhere in Ethiopia and saw places like that where it was carved down into the stone. And then Jordan is like that, isn't it? Where the walls have been
that's probably what I was thinking of. Yep, absolutely.
And what's interesting, coming up with your giant theory, all the doors in Jordan are like 18 feet tall or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Why would you build that for yourself, for a 5 or 6 foot human? Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some of these projects, I mean, if you had an army of 12-foot tall people,
they could get a lot of work done in a day.
Yeah, maybe they pulled those stones into place, but modern day humans, I mean, I don't know that you can get enough people around a 50-ton stone to lift it 200 feet in the air for the pyramids.
Yeah, I mean, that is the baffling thing. It's just like, how do you get some of those stones that far up? And with such precision, and some people are like, well, they built a giant ramp out of sand. Okay,
where did all that sand? How much
to have a ramp?
What's the volume of sand and the density of sand? The volume that you would have to get those 200 or 300 feet in the air, and
they say that they went around the pyramid, like it worked their way around it. It's like, oh my goodness, that is
no.
Yeah, you need like half the sand in the Sahara Desert just to make one pyramid, right?
Right. And then it just all blew away.
Wouldn't it make a little bit of sense to
knock it all down?
Wouldn't it make a little bit of sense that as you did build a pyramid, you could use the pyramid as part of the tool to move the stones? Like somehow from the other side, weights, balance, different things, like
as a foundation, as a platform to keep sure
in and of itself, rather than this ramp theory. I just don't see that. It would just be
but the technology that we think they had at that time would eliminate that, the ability to lift those stones into place with such precision.
And because like going back to like the interior thing, like if you think about it, they essentially what they had to do was they had to make a platform. Then they had to build up that platform in the middle so that they could put the structure of the, say, king's chamber in there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to build like other parts around it to make those tubes that perfectly went to the outside and have them stably there. And then they built the Queen's chamber and the other chambers around to have them there. And then you've got to fill in the space that around it. Then you've got to build the outside. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
And then remove the interior structure.
People don't think about like the interior of the pyramid is somewhere. It's not just a bunch of bricks stacked up. It's not like taking
there's
Lego
cavities
bricks.
in there.
Yeah, there's cavities, there's openings, there's structure to
and
it.
Everything got a vessel to take a trip into the afterlife. And what if it wasn't necessarily your physical form that left? It was your essence, your being could travel.
Well, they never found any dead things inside.
No, that's what we said. There's no body.
They've never found a body in there.
So did it travel human flesh, or did you jump into another form of yourself when you got there?
I don't think any of the pyramids were meant to be tombs or transportation.
I don't think so.
Other things at all. This is the other fascinating thing is in the Valley of Kings, everyone was buried in a sarcophagus. And if you think about it, I mean, they did this in Stargate. They took this idea in Stargate. Think about this for a moment. Okay, let's say that, we are a primitive civilization. You and I, Brett, we're all primitive civilization. We're sitting here.
Definitely.
And suddenly one day we're like, hey, look at that. This chariot, the shield, like whatever is like coming down from the sky. That's very strange. And it landed and these people got out. And then you're like, we start working with these people and we're building up. They're teaching us all kinds of things. We're like, wow, this is cool. We're learning all this stuff from these guys. They're so advanced. Their knowledge is so great. And when our guys get into a bar fight with them, one night at the tavern, we can't beat them. They have systems and stuff on them where we can't even touch them. A knife won't cut their skin, because they've got armor on or something. You know what I mean? So we start thinking these guys are like gods compared to us. And then one day something does happen, an accident or something happens where one of them gets injured on the job while they're building these structures that they're helping us build. And we go, oh my gosh, the gods can get hurt. They can die. Look, they hauled them off. And they put them in a rejuvenation chamber. So we see this sarcophagus thing that they put the dead guy in. And then 3 or 4 days later, the thing opens up and the guy gets out. And we go, oh my gosh, he got resurrected.
Their version of a hospital.
But really, it was hospital technology that healed them and they came back out. They weren't actually ever dead. So now all of a sudden we've got a society, like they leave, they go, okay, we're done here. We helped you build that stuff. We'll see you guys later. We'll be back in like 1,000 years, and they fly away. And then we go, well, we got to start. Susie just died. Oh my gosh, I don't want her to die. Let's build a sarcophagus. Let's build a coffin.
Yeah.
Let's just like we saw them in, and maybe she'll come back. And that's where we get all our, that's why we have coffins, and that's why we have sarcophagus, and that's why these Egyptians, they write down like if we do all these things and preserve their body in the right way, they'll come back. They'll get resurrected. And once,
not having that
once the primitive society catches on, well, nobody's returned in the flesh. Well, maybe our species is different from the gods, and ours comes back in spiritual form, and they're transcending to another level.
There's a piece.
Saw so we keep evolving that idea that we picked up from them, but.
There's a piece that we didn't have that they had, the sort of a key.
Why would you come out of the blue? Like if you're a primitive society, why would you suddenly just out of the blue go, you know what I think? We've been burying our dead in the dirt for many, many years. I think we should suddenly start building these ornate sarcophagus,
right,
gold and trim and everything.
Right.
And what
Even
we
for the
should
cat
do
and the
too
dog.
is try to preserve the body as much as possible by embalming it with all these fluids and wrapping it.
Right.
You don't just go from throwing them in the mud to that.
No.
And there's no like in between stage.
But it's almost like a piece of the puzzle that they knew we didn't have. So we failed at it.
Yeah, maybe they did.
We watched them sort of have a triage, a medical triage. Guy gets hurt on the job. He goes in this thing. He comes back out. He's fine. Hey, we can do that too. Well, why aren't they coming back? Well, you took all our organs out and you didn't do the right.
Look.
Yeah,
we showed you how to build the pyramids. We're not going to tell
That's
you
right.
how
We can't tell you
bring
everything.
somebody back.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. But thanks for coming on today, John, and talking about this stuff with us. It's one of those things that I know we could probably talk all night about. And I definitely want you to come. I definitely want you to come back.
Yeah.
There's so many other things that I think it connects to. And there's such
but the fun thing about it is, I mean, when you really come down to it and you got to be like honest with yourself and everything, I mean, all of this is just pure speculation.
Yes.
But you got to think like, what if? You know what I mean?
It's all a big what if, and some of it some of it makes sense at a certain time. At a certain moment, you put it together and you go, maybe.
Well, if you don't explore it.
But there's a piece of it that we can't sort of connect because I feel like there's a piece of that knowledge that was lost that won't give us the right elements to click in the right order, the Rubik's Cube, so to speak.
Yeah.
To turn that machine back on to let us do that again.
Yeah.
But there are humans that are kind of tapping into the potential of the mind to get close, but maybe just, life isn't long enough to get you the answer you need. So, and then it just comes down to what's on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and how close are we to actually extending that life? I mean, if you hear some of the medical journals are suggesting that people that are born today might never die.
Well, they're definitely saying over 100.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
So there's a chance that if technology keeps going the way it is, we might have the chance for someone who's a genius in figuring this stuff out to live long enough to figure it all out. But on the other side of it too is that what if one of these craft does land in the next? I mean, hopefully it does before we die. And we get to see these aliens and join the Federation or whatever's out there.
The big talk is January 5th, right? We're supposed to get the big. I think it's the
alien
5th.
reveal.
I think it's on the 5th. Is the somebody said it'll be on the 5th.
But what if one of these things does land and they start going? You know what? We were here 10,000 years ago.
Tried to tell you guys, and that pyramid, it's a power station. You
we're all
screwed
like, we
this
knew
all
it.
up. How did you guys screw this up?
And it was clean energy too. You could have powered the whole planet off of it.
I mean, how do you imagine some things? Sometimes it's almost like a piece of past history lies in a sort of common thread throughout the universe that connects our minds. And, it's like that age-old tale where, let's just say those were transportation centers and there was somebody supposed to be on duty, do one little thing, and he slipped up. He was in a hurry. He dropped a, grain of sand where it should have been hydrogen mixed fuel or something, and
who knows?
Ruined the whole thing because John got up late today. And
oops.
But until next time, though, brother, we'll
thanks, John. Interesting, fun. I mean, many more rabbit holes to travel down.
Talk to you here after I stop the recording. Hang on 1 second. But thanks again.
Yeah, it was fun. It's good. It's always good to talk about this stuff.
Cool.
You know.
All right, let me hit.